I hope you all had a relaxing break, because now that I'm back, it's time to get educated. In honor of this sacred month and all things scary, today's lesson will be about the most dangerous creature known to man, Mothman. Don't be deceived by the imbeciles saying he's just an urban legend. Mothman is very real, and he's not to be taken lightly. So we're going to learn everything there is to know about him, so that way you too can sleep in fear knowing he's out there watching you. So what exactly is Mothman? No one knows for sure. He's either a man with the powers of a moth, or a moth with the powers of a man. Either way, he's classified as a cryptid, which means there's little to no scientific information to verify him as a species. Some other iconic examples include Bigfoot, the Yeti, Goatman, and even Nessie. However, while there is scientific data to suggest Nessie is nothing but a cringe, critically endangered species, there is nothing to suggest Mothman isn't the only one of his kind. Nessie may have her extended family haunting the waters across the globe, one of which lives in my neck of the woods. But as for Mothman, his powers are beyond our comprehension. Lord help us all. The only thing that gives us an edge against this son of a bitch is the fact that Mothman is bound to the great state of West Virginia, in the small town of Point Pleasant. There's actually a documentary that covers this, so let's take a look at that, shall we?
Described as a humanoid creature with massive wings and glowing red eyes, this man with wings was first spotted in this area in the 1960s and has been a fixture of life in Point Pleasant ever since. The monster is a perfect example of iconic modern American folklore.
His stomping grounds are straight out of the 1940s. This is the type of community I picture when people start yapping about the olden days. Now, the reason why Mothman is bound to this humble community is because of its connection with the TNT area, a former manufacturing lab for ammunition during World War II. Now just a wildlife management area, people believe Mothman is an indirect product of this lab, which also makes our Second Amendment rights completely useless against fighting him.
There's even a Mothman statue in the middle of downtown.
Hi. It speaks to the idea that this really is modern folklore. It came from this town. Like, we're staking this spot in this part of the world as Mothman. So they're really uniting Mothman and Point Pleasant and West Virginia.
And there he is in all his grotesque glory. I don't even think the entire Justice League would stand a chance against the cryptid of the night sky.
On December 15th, 1967, this paranormal activity culminated in a very real tragedy, the collapse of Silver Bridge. Some claimed Mothman was the cause of the accident. Others say he was actually meant to forewarn the town of the catastrophe. But how do you explain the Mothman phenomenon? Was it an elaborate hoax, or did people simply mistake something real for an imaginary creature? Or maybe it was something truly so bizarre that it just can't be easily explained.
Well, then allow me to try and provide an explanation for what might have happened. Here's my little game theory. Mothman is so far advanced in terms of evolution that he wanted to help humans get on par with him. You know, humans are being held back in terms of evolution, so he thought that by destroying the bridge, it would force the people of Point Pleasant to learn how to fly, like he does. I did say he was dangerous, and that had nothing to do in terms of intellect, though he's probably more dangerous now if it turns out he's not the brightest bulb in the box.
Over the following 3 days after the November 15th sighting, at least 8 more people reported similar creatures.
My brother said, well, don't look, but there's something there beside the car. If I'd rolled my window down, I just could have touched it. And then it jumped on the hood and just sat there and just squatted kind of and looked at us. But it did have the biggest red eyes, and it run right past the car, and it jumped up in the air.
Now, I don't know what the Mothman was doing in that woman's story, but it should be taken very seriously. He's not a saint. At most, he's an angel of darkness, providing wisdom through sheer chaos.
It was proposed early on that the Mothman was actually a sandhill crane, when a West Virginia University professor told the press in an article published December 1st, 1966, quote, "I definitely believe that's what these people are seeing." Sandhill cranes have an average wingspan of around 6.5 feet and are about 3 to 4 feet tall. They also happen to have red patches around their eyes.
Pardon me, an outsider, to speak on behalf of the people of Point Pleasant, but how f***ing dumb do you think the people of West Virginia are? No shot that was just a sandhill crane. On the off chance one decided to migrate there for whatever reason, they're not even that tall. We get those here in Georgia, and they do not resemble a Mothman. You'd have to be a child or dying of dementia to mistake a sandhill crane as anything other than a bird. They don't even resemble a man. Whoever wrote that should be fired. Now, it's important to note there are other theories trying to figure out what exactly is Mothman. Some people believe he might be an extraterrestrial or interdimensional being that's now attached itself to Point Pleasant. However, I can find no conclusive evidence to suggest Mothman isn't from Earth. The only thing that supports this theory is that some testimonials who claim to have encountered Mothman also said they experienced intimidation from men in black. But I think that is something that can easily be faked, and if not, there's a variety of explanations. Aforementioned, the narrative people have latched onto is that Mothman is a byproduct of the TNT area. The men in black could be the government trying to cover up whatever deranged experiment took place inside that lab. Maybe they f***ed up trying to create a super soldier. I have no clue. But what I do know is that there's a ton of reasons for the shadow government to get involved with Mothman. That doesn't mean he's an alien. This might come as a shock to some people, but the government is known for doing some shady shit. Another theory is that Mothman is some kind of warning or omen sent to the residents of Point Pleasant to signal their impending doom, like in the case of the Silver Bridge collapse. However, since Mothman sightings abruptly stopped after this, I don't think that's the case unless it was just a one-and-done job. They were trying to be like Spider-Man, but chose a very uneventful place to help people. And then the final theory is that it was all a hoax, a bunch of bullshit. And I gotta say, out of all the theories, that one is the worst. Regardless of the truth, however, the fact is the presence of Mothman helped shape a collective community. Its existence not only benefited the people of Point Pleasant, but has since then become a cultural phenomenon and one of the most iconic cryptids to ever exist. It helped foster a relationship with the paranormal, and whether or not one views Mothman as a supernatural harbinger or figment of one's imagination, its legacy continues to have a grasp on the occult and eludes simple explanations. Anyways, that about concludes this spooky little lesson. If you ever have a fateful encounter with the demonic angel, hopefully you won't have to think twice about what you just saw. Hope you all enjoyed this, and that's really about it. So,